Hi, welcome to episode 5 of my commentary for Jon Schaffer's Finally Free interview. In the previous video, you saw Jon talking about his spiritual awakening, continuing the story from episode 3, as well as what happened on the day, January 6th, what he saw, what his pastor saw, what Jon experienced, and some of the questionable behavior of the police officers and federal employees. And we got right up to where Jon now has to self-surrender. And this video continues on with the aftermath of that, his initial arrest and his housing in different environments as a prisoner of the federal government and local authorities. So let's get to it.
Surrender. So I did.
Okay.
And
So what's the process that happened after that? So you self-surrender your local police department? Is that what it was? Or
yeah, I went to, well, afterwards I went to my girlfriend's and in Fort Wayne, and I surrendered in Hamilton County.
Okay.
My local attorney was in hopes that they would book me there, but
Okay.
the feds wanted me to have a special time at the old Marion County Jail.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So I was in solitary confinement there. Actually, for the first 2 days, I was in general population, and then I think that's not what the feds wanted.
Yep.
You know, I mean, they said it was because for my own safety because I was in the news everywhere, but I think that's, you know, but we were denied attorney-client privilege. We were denied access to the law library. We were denied, you know, their policy, bright lights,
Patriot Act.
24/7. You
Local
know, I was in a
domestic terrorist.
5x8 cell, so with the bunk and the toilet sink combo, I could take like 3 steps in my cell, and it was filthy, disgusting. You know, for at least 6 weeks of it, I was next to suicide block, so the walls are all just steel plates that are welded together,
Yep.
and I felt like I was in Arkham Asylum.
6 weeks just against the suicide watch guys.
Yeah,
Ugh.
yeah. So it was.
That's
I
your
mean,
reaction?
obviously,
Ugh.
you're,
Jesus.
everybody in there is under a tremendous amount of stress, and
Yeah, and I guess to talk about why being up against that particular block, the suicide block, would be so horrible in the metal walls.
well, because you hear everything.
Yeah.
You know, it's just a sheet of metal. They're sheets of metal welded together, and then in that I was in 4 different facilities, and that one had the old school jail bars. So you just it's all steel and concrete, so it's like brutal on the ears, especially a guy who's used his ears for a living.
Yeah.
It was just adding an extra level to it, but all the screaming and stuff, it was like it was right in your head because there was no getting away from it. Yeah, and the, you know, bright lights, freezing cold cell, not being some days where you don't get out for rec at all. You know, you're supposedly by law, I mean, I guess it depends on by whose law, but you're supposed to get an hour out, and there were definitely days that went by that didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. That
Was one of the things that was quite a relief to be in DC because you got your hour rec, and
Yeah.
it's weird. Like the experiences, DC was the best facility, like by far that I was in.
It has the
What
most
made
eyes
stand
on it.
out as being better than anywhere else?
Has the most eyes on it.
'Cause it's federal, or
I guess maybe they followed the rules more closely than a county jail.
okay?
I
Yeah.
mean, you know, you got your hour of rec every day. Turned out the lights at night. They had us all isolated in 2-man cells, so you had more space.
Mm-hmm.
There was more room to move around in your cell. And
And you can tell it was hard on him. And I wouldn't expect it not to be, obviously. But especially if you've never been not only dehumanized but repeatedly dehumanized. A lot of people in the Western world don't experience that. Oh, well, I won't say a lot. I say the majority of people don't experience being genuinely, brutally dehumanized. And not just once, but repeatedly. And for that, I hope it never happens to you. But if you've never been dehumanized and then going into a situation like that, it can break your spirit. And to be honest, I mean, a lot of my trauma happened before I was 13 years old. And I had more than a lifetime worth before I was 13. Nothing to do with my mom or my family. This had to do with babysitters and caretakers and stuff like that. But that being said, get it out of the way early, and it's easier to deal with, and you learn to avoid it when you get older. But I wouldn't wish it on anyone. I don't think it's something that someone should do so they can deal with it later. What I would hope is that it doesn't happen to any of you. And I really wish this wouldn't have happened to Jon, because I don't know the man personally. But from the very first interviews to his last days to even on January 6th, there was a spark. And they killed it. The United States government treatment of this man killed it. And I'm sure as I stated before, I'm sure there were people who came out revitalized and pissed and vitriolic and ready to do battle. But there were other people that it broke, and it looks like it broke Jon. That's not a judgment. I empathize. I do hate it for him.
And I was locked up with some pretty amazing people.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, yeah. Like even though they would only let 4 of us out at a time, everybody go right to the phones, because there were 4 phones, and then after you finish up talking to your family and your people, then you had a chance to visit, have some human interaction with people that get it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I met some of the most informed, amazing patriots I've ever met in there. And they had 2 blocks in the DC gulag that were just for J6ers. So
did you have
That's
more
insane.
interaction with them, like as far as the other people that were locked up?
not between the blocks,
Okay.
but when you're out for rec, and then I was able to get on detail to mop and sweep.
Okay.
One of the guys who was an awesome person, he was the detail guy when I arrived there. Mm-hmm. And he's a Christian guy and super cool, very patriotic dude. And when he got released, he told them that he wanted me to get that position so I could get out and move my body for a couple hours a day. So that made it better too. And also because one of the things that he was doing was talking people off the ledge, and I started doing that too, because most of those guys that got put there, in my experience, there were a lot of people that went through the place, but in the ones that I interacted with were in general population until they got to DC, and then they were in solitary, so they were freaking out. Mm-hmm. I'd been in solitary the whole time,
Yeah.
So it wasn't. I was like happy to have a cell that I could move around in. And they turn off the lights at night. And,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, yeah, there was black mold on the wall, but they gave us the stuff to clean it.
There you
That
go.
was, you know, and they're like in Marion County, you got one roll of single ply toilet paper a week.
A week?
Yeah.
All right.
So you better not. You better get along well with the disgusting food in the joint, or you're going to have a problem. And that was not the case in the DC Gulag. And actually, I have to say, my experience with the guards there, I didn't, you know, they acted professionally, and the it was his, I think Sergeant Robinson, I think, was the guy that was overseeing it. He just seemed like a no nonsense but good guy if you respected and didn't do anything stupid. Like
Do
he
what
did.
you're
I
told.
never saw him treat anybody with anything but respect.
Good.
Like,
I'm glad to hear that.
yeah, I mean, so that's my experience. But I was able to, without having the bars, obviously, you got steel doors and just a little window to look out into
Yeah.
the cell block, and so to try to communicate with the guys, you're yelling through the door frame, you know, and yeah, I mean, it's a dark place. And especially going into solitary for the first time, it takes
Yeah.
a while to adjust to that because you've lost human contact, you know.
So what was your total time in lockup?
About a little over 3 months, I think.
A little over 3 months.
Yeah.
During that time, did you know like how the media was portraying you, or what they're making all the J6ers, or how they're making all the J6ers look?
Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, Jamie was, I think she was trying to protect me from adding more weight to the situation. I didn't realize it was what, I really didn't see that till after I got out, the level of deception that was going on about all of us. And I mean, my guys in the band bailed on me. Not all of them. Also a blessing, you know. You find out who your friends are in a situation like that.
Indeed.
And I forgive them. It's just, but you know, I know who they are. I mean,
Everyone except Brent Smedley, the drummer. Everyone. Larry Appleton, the Rat Stew Block, everyone except Brent. True blue, man. Good guy. That, no matter whether you agree with Jon or not, to have that sort of loyalty is a good thing. And it speaks to who Jon is as a person, that he evokes that sort of loyalty from a guy he's been in a band with, actually off and on. Brent's actually left Iced Earth and come back. I think Jon's a genuinely good guy, but we've seen with Stu that he is a rat think scumbag. Just an opinion.
I really felt in my heart that we were brothers, and but without it, it just shows people. You see people's true character. So it's a blessing to have gone through this, and I have a lot of people that love me, man. I'm very rich in that regard, because it's amazing the amount of people that did stick with me and stood by my side through it, and were there for support. You know, a lot of people didn't. That's okay.
Yeah.
You know.
So during your time in lockup, I know just from our conversations before, I know you were doing some, I guess, soul searching or coming to some realizations there. You want to talk about that?
Well, I mean, you really don't have anything else to do.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you're gonna be doing some soul searching. I mean, yeah, it was. Any chance I got out, obviously I was dying to talk to my girlfriend, but So I was obviously like dying for that hour, to get on the phone and to talk to whoever I could. And Jamie, I talked to her every day. But it was, the spiritual journey. It's certainly, I think I've kind of been on it for a while, but let's say it came into focus by going through this. And we had one Bible, and anytime they changed facilities, you can't take anything.
Okay.
So I lost the Bible I ordered in Marion County. I wasn't in Hamilton long enough to get one. And then DC, they didn't have, they cut us off from the law library, from the app on whatever tablets. They had tablets that you could have for a couple hours. They had that app shut off. You had to know the case law if you wanted to talk to the caseworker that came to the cell block for a couple hours a day. How are people going to know that?
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, maybe you can get somebody to look something up on one phone call, and then the next day, it's all shady, man. But anyway, I did start reading the Bible, but it was, I wasn't really there. It was like after, like I've said, I mean, it was the beginning. Actually, it wasn't the beginning, but this has been a slow process because I'm a very bullheaded individual. So. But even when I think back, like the timing of the Schaffer Barlow project, that came out also while I was locked up. And, well, it came out digitally before, but just before.
Okay.
Like by the time we got it mixed and everything, and then I think the physical copies started to arrive while I was locked up.
Oh wow. Okay.
To the Kickstarter backers, and the book also came out while I was locked up. So, but
yeah, the book is interesting because in there he does dramatic readings to new interpretations of compositions that he's written. So when he reads these lyrics in this dramatic fashion, and he does some that translate really well, like doing Dante's Inferno is fantastic, without a shadow of a doubt. But when you hear other tracks, like it starts off with Dystopia, and when you hear like Dystopia or Declarations Day, and what was the other one? Come What May. I think a reviewer even said this. It comes off, because it was recorded before January 6th, but came out after January 6th. They come off as almost like a threat. And you heard John in this interview in a previous video talking about he read the white papers, and really Dystopia kind of came as he had written what they were planning on doing. And so, yeah, Dystopia, Declarations Day, it comes off like a threat. It comes off very sinister because he's doing it in this kind of low gravitas sort of way. And I if it weren't for the January 6th thing, I think it would have come off differently, but it came off pretty sinister. Now, I knew what it was. I liked the narrative project. It's nothing that you kind of jump on and go to. I think the best part of it was honestly the 10-minute rendition of Dante's Inferno. I think it worked out great. But, yeah, if you haven't heard, go to whatever streaming service you use if you don't own it yourself, and listen to him do Dystopia in that dramatic reading that he does. It sounds, if you listen to it in retrospect, if you listen to it now, he's narrating what happened. If you listen to it at the time, he's telling you what's going to happen. And if you listen to it when he recorded it, it's almost prophecy. It's it's interesting. But yeah, let's get back to it.
But so, but there was a tremendous amount of PTSD afterwards, and that's when I really my faith journey started. I mean, it was being in solitary, lots of thinking, realizing the power and the evil that you're up against.
Yep.
You know, like when you see and dealing with those people, let me tell you something. So that was getting back to the Oath Keepers thing. You know, that was a narrative that they created to try to get others to break, like as if I had some kind of information. I mean, dude, I am
That was obvious.
touring heavy metal guy. I'm not the
Yeah, D. Snyder, who Razor Fist has a great video called D. Snyder is a Dehydrated Sack or something, where D. Snyder is not only shit talking John for giving up people, but just talking about how he doesn't represent heavy metal, whatever. It is obvious to anyone. One, there's nothing to tell about the Oath Keepers. There's nothing to tell. They were making them out to be like some sort of militant group or whatever. But you heard John explain who they were, and if you did 2 seconds of investigation, you would realize that yourself. John had no information to give. But asshats like D. Snyder and his ilk want to believe it. They don't want to find any information that disavows anything that they already believe. They love this narrative. They love this idea that they're on the side of right, and they can wear that self-righteousness like a vest. But it turns out John wasn't part of any sort of conspiracy, any sort of group that wanted to take over the government. He was just a guy who's a patriot who thought, well, you know what? Just a few months previous in Washington, D.C., they were firebombing the White House and setting fires on the streets of Washington, D.C. BLM and Antifa were. What we did is nothing compared to that, so we're going to be fine. And little did he know. By the way, if you didn't know that a few months prior that actually happened, it is because it was not done on the mainstream. But if you go and search for it yourself, and you will see the firebomb and all the bullshit that BLM and Antifa got up to just a few minutes prior, back in 2020 in Washington. And then after January 6th, where you had leftists break into these buildings and occupy offices, yet nothing happened to them, it tells you how much that the insurrection story is just complete horseshit. There was no reason for John to believe that anything was going to come of this because barely anything happened. But like I said before, they had the narrative. And no matter if it went exactly the way they wanted to or 100 people showed up, they were going to run with that narrative.
Founder, leader of a militia, touring heavy metal guy. I'm not the founder, leader of a militia.
Yeah.
And I'm not even sure that they did anything wrong. I don't know. I didn't see any violence.
Yep.
I saw the mainstream media saying they walked up the stairs in a military stack formation. I'm like looking at the footage, like it looks kind of like they're making their way up the stairs
It's
or
a
walking
little
up the
sloppy.
stairs.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not close order drill here. This is.
I don't know. So, but you know, that was the narrative, and I couldn't say anything. I was threatened, you know, to
Yep.
make any public statement. Threatened it's going to go very bad for you at sentencing if you say anything, because they knew they were creating a false narrative. But
Yeah.
you know. But anyway, back to the faith. You would have thought it was hard enough being in there. That was the come to Jesus moment.
Come to Jesus moment.
It was the
yeah.
It was the step before the come to Jesus moment. It was one of
Yep.
the steps before, and it was really when I realized how out of whack I was when I had the falling out with my daughter, and that was terrible and ugly. And then I found a church the day, well, it was, horribly enough, it was Christmas Eve. And then it was the day after Christmas that I found a church that was in the area that I was living at in Florida. And I went there for a few times, and it started to feel a little bit like religion. And then I went to another one in the area within like a 15-minute drive. Also felt a little bit like religion. And then Gene invited me to his church, which was an hour and a half away. So, but I just fell in love with the place. It was Lakeview Church in Tarpon Springs. And so I would go there, stay at Gene's Saturday night, get up and go to church, but I would do it maybe once or twice a month. Like most of the time it was streaming, because that was a long trip. And sometimes I would go over there just for the service, leave really early in the morning, get there and drive back, but it's a lot of time in the car. And I had asked, his name's Pastor Tim Miller. I asked him to baptize me, and we did that at his house, in his pool. And it still wasn't all the way there. I was there. I was on my way there.
What made you want to get baptized? Because I know we've had conversations before, and it's not baptism that saves you. It's an outward sign of an inward change. Is usually, once again, a churchy way to say, hey, this is a public display for Jon Schaffer to show that old John's dead, and now the new John in Christ is out there. What prompted you to
just that?
Yeah,
it was just I know that it doesn't like guarantee salvation or something like that.
Yeah.
That's not the point. It was more of that. I had no choice when I was a baby, and this was a choice that I wanted to make.
Makes sense.
That's all. Really, there's
that makes sense.
Nothing more to it, and so.
Yeah, growing up in the South, I was baptized when I was younger, and I was probably around 10. And you had this feeling that's kind of overwhelming, at least I did, where I honestly felt like brand new, and that's part of it. And the people who tend to take to Christianity specifically, really with a death grip, are kids, because it's called indoctrination. It's the doctrine. It's indoctrination. It's called that for a reason. And then people who have been at the lowest points of their life. But what happens, and I'm only saying this as a kid, but I actually seen this with adults, is not only do you get baptized, and like they said, is this idea of shedding the old you and new you. You do have a feeling that this is the first day of my journey. Like everything was rehearsal, everything was studying coming up to this point. And from this point on, I'm making strides. And so even though John says he wasn't there yet, what happens is that now when you backslide, you have a purpose bringing you forward. And then it actually comes into play when you're making decisions that were decisions you made before you were saved. And it's kind of a thing that helps you make the better decision for yourself and your spiritual self, as opposed to your corrupt, selfish self. So it's that sort of idea. So I don't know if you've ever been baptized, or if you've ever had that experience, but that's a lot like what it's like. And like John said, when you're baptized when you're a kid, you have no choice. So maybe they did it as a baby or whatever. So it does have an effect on you.
I did it, and
that makes sense.
Nothing more to it, and so I did it, and like I said, then I moved back to Indiana, found you wonderful people,
Cornerstone Church.
Realized how much we have in common, and how it's just amazing the way God works, and so.
Yeah, if you're watching this, the original video is at a website. And what is that website called? The YouTube channel is called Later Than You Think, and they have a handful of videos that run like 8 or 9 minutes. I think there's like 12 episodes. The only video on this YouTube channel that has the comments turned on is this one. The rest of the videos, the comments are turned off, and when you watch those videos, there is a reason, because they're kind of kooky. And this is every church has its idiosyncrasies. This has more than one. But it is what it is. And you'll notice that the videos barely have any views. Except maybe this one. This will be definitely their most viewed video on the channel. And I don't know how it will do for their subscribers, because the other videos have nothing to do with this, but they do give an indication of how these people work, how these people think at this church, and it's interesting.
I don't know. It's just amazing the way God works, and so I think the next level after me studying God's Word, going to Lakeview Church, I still watch Lakeview Church services on Sunday nights when I get home from work.
Yeah.
So, because I learn, and I like to learn. So, but it was, the next step was when I forgave my parents. That was a big step. It was a huge one, because I didn't realize it. Just one of those things, like the Holy Spirit told me.
Yeah.
Revealed it to me somehow, like, dude, you can't not forgive your parents.
Yeah.
Like,
The Holy Spirit said, dude. It's kooky.
you can't not forgive your parents.
Yeah.
Like,
You hadn't fully surrendered yet.
no,
Yeah.
that's the thing.
Well, it's that
Yeah,
commandment
that's why I
too.
say
It's still a journey. Yeah.
it's still
Number
a journey.
5.
It's, I still,
Honor thy father and thy mother.
I think it's always going to be a struggle, just because the human aspect of it, there's only one perfect human that's ever lived.
Yeah.
And
Jesus.
yeah.